This week, we sail from the Turks and Caicos Islands to explore the shallow waters of the Bahamas aboard Distant Shores 3, our new variable draft Southerly 480.
Cheryl and I have been cruising and living aboard for 30 years now, and Distant Shores 3 is the third Southerly we've owned. A lot of people ask us why we like Southerly yachts and have questions about cruising with a variable draft keel. So in this video about shallow water piloting in the Bahamas, we thought we'd answer some of these questions, especially since, for this cruise, we've invited friends and fellow Southerly yacht owners to join us.
Between us, this group has owned 9 Southerlies. Our friends have cruised extensively around the UK, the Med, and the Caribbean, but it will be the first time they have sailed in the thin water of the Bahamas. So our focus will be on shallow water piloting throughout this voyage.
First, some introductions. Nick Gill, founder of Gill Marine, sailed with us on our recent transatlantic passage and is back aboard Distant Shores 3 for the Bahamas cruise with his wife Caroline. Nick and Caroline are now the proud owners of a brand new Southerly 435, which they keep in Cornwall, England. Before that, they sailed a Southerly 32.
Richard and Julie Thomas first sailed with us in the British Virgin Islands in 2008 and later bought a classic 32-foot Southerly, but are now sailing a lovely Southerly 42, which they keep in Lymington, England.
And sailing in company with us is our sister ship Cared, the second Southerly 480 built by Discovery Yachts. Owners Rob and Sue Heath of Leeds, England, crossed the Atlantic Ocean aboard Cared at the same time as we did. They previously owned a 35-foot Southerly, which they cruised extensively, including a circumnavigation of the UK.
This group has a lot of experience navigating the shallows and drying out in the extreme tidal areas around the UK, so we're looking forward to an offshore sail from the Turks and Caicos to the Bahamas, where we'll be swinging up the keel on Distant Shores 3 and Cared and exploring areas of the sunny Bahamas that are rarely visited by most sailboats.
The prevailing winds in between the Turks and Caicos Islands and the Bahamas are from the east, and it's just over 50 miles, so we make it a day sail from Provo over to Mayaguana in the Bahamas. This time of the year, winds are often a bit lighter, but today we have 20 to 25 knots from astern, so it's time to unfurl both head sails for a great wing-on-wing double head sail romp along. And right beside us is Cared. Sailing in deep water like this, we can swing the keel all the way down, making us a deep draft boat. The depth of the boat goes to 10 foot 2 inches, then she will roll less when sailing downwind in big seas, and will be much better sailing upwind as well.
We arrive in Mayaguana to clear in, but it's Good Friday and everything is closed, so we're instructed to carry on to clear in at Georgetown, a 3-day sail away. We set sail the next day with a stiff breeze. We must continue to fly our yellow Q flag, Q for quarantine, to show that we haven't cleared in yet.
We're right on the edge of a wall here, so it's probably 110 meters on one side and 14 on the other. It's straight down.
We are in the Plana Keys. This is West Plana in the beautiful Bahamas.
We had hoped to anchor off the Plana Keys for the night, but the anchorage is not very well protected against the higher swells we're getting in these strong winds, so we decide to head on another 20 miles to anchor in Atwood Harbor on Acklins Island. Atwood Harbor is one of those remote places that reminds us of how very lucky we are as sailors that we can travel aboard our floating home with everything we need. There are just 3 other boats here, including our sister ship, and there's a lot of room for everyone.
The enclosed bay of Atwood Harbor is fed with water from the surrounding mangrove, which accounts for the striking emerald green color of the water in this bay.
And there's a beach more than a mile long of perfect white sand. We stay put today to explore the mile-long beach. It's also Easter, so we have everybody over to Distant Shores 3 for an Easter dinner. Gravy, stuffing, and everything.
The next leg of our voyage takes us from Atwood Harbor into deep water to the Crooked Island Passage, where at French Wells we are all looking forward to raising the keels on the 2 Southerlies and taking the ground.
This is Bird Rock Light. Construction began in 1866, over 150 years ago. Lighthouses were very important to shipping in the Bahamas due to the shallow water. Because of its height and brightness, this light can be seen over 20 miles away.
We're in deep water here, over 500 meters, so the water is a dark sapphire blue. When sailing in the Bahamas, the water is so clear you can often navigate by the color. As we get into shallower depths, the water will become turquoise and then paler blue. Yellow or white patches mean sandbanks and shoals.
French Wells is so named because French pirates used this area as a hideout in days of old. Our plan is to beach the boats on this sandbank. Rob and Sue demonstrate the technique of dropping the swing keel as an anchor. Carrot is heading toward the bank with the keel down 3 feet below the hull to stop them going further on the sand. On Distant Shores 3, we're raising the keel so there's only 1 foot of keel exposed, so we will come up on the sand a little further. Then we drop the keel down in the sand. Since our keel weighs 4,700 pounds, or over 2,000 kilos, they should hold us firmly in place like a parking brake. We could raise the keel all the way up, but then there's the risk we could get stuck at the next high tide and not be able to get off.
When grounding or drying out, the bottom of the hulls on all southerly yachts are protected by a solid cast iron grounding plate, which is also part of the ballast. Here is what the grounding plate and swing keel mechanism look like before being built into the hulls. You can see how thick and heavy they are. When grounded, the boat's weight is taken on the grounding plate and the skeg, which protects the propeller. The weight of the boat is not placed on the twin rudders, although they are built to take the load. We really like this system, and having owned 3 southerly yachts now, have come to trust them for the off-the-beaten-path style of cruising that we do.
Because this bay is so shallow, pirates used it as a hideout, since most ships couldn't get in here due to the depth of their vessels, or because of a lack of local knowledge. French Wells appeals to us for the same reason. Cruising boats rarely come into this bay since it's so shallow.
This shelf is fun to dry out on with our keels retracted. As the tide falls, we can wade around in the shallows or swim in the deep water off the stern, keeping an eye on the current running through here. So our Canadian canoeing skills are coming in.
Yes.
Later, after showering, we head over to Carrot for happy hour, sunset views, and dinner aboard.
Oh, we're really out of the water. Look at that. A pretty quiet night here. Now we've got to get underway, except it's kind of low tide. We've got a few meters in here of water, and this huge bank expands over to Acklands on the other side, and then we've got to get out the shallowest part, which is out into the ocean, and then into the sound area, and hopefully the tide's a little later there, so perhaps it won't be such shallow water. The chart for this area shows we have just over 1 meter or 3 foot depths at low tide, and as most places in the Bahamas, there are no aids to navigation, so we must identify the shallower sandbanks by the color of the water. All right, anchor's off, so let's get out and see what the shallow water looks like out there with this state of the tide. Tidal range this morning is just over 2 feet, and it's just past low tide, so it'll be quite shallow on the way out, likely just 4 or 5 feet in places. Wow, look at this water. It's 4.5 meters right here. We're still doing 3 knots, and it's 3 meters, but we're gonna get into shallower. But this looks pretty good straight ahead. This course, we've got this shallow sand though, so we make sure we can get over that. I would say it's still 1.5 true depth. Here we come, this is the shallowest bit, 1.2, 1.1. We recommend polarized sunglasses so you can see through the water surface and judge where the shallower water is, since sandbanks may have shifted from what's shown on the charts. Yeah, you want to plan this to have the sun over your shoulder. Oh, and there's a little coral head right there. Are we missing that other one? That's it. Back in deep water now. Just have to dodge the coral heads, which are pretty darn easy to see. There's one. From the Crooked Acklands group, we're crossing over the Deepwater Sound to the Great Bahama Bank. It's 75 miles, so we spend a night at anchor tucked in behind Long Island, then head back onto the shallow banks again for the trip up to Hog Cay Cut.
It's just been a magnificent day going across the Great Bahama Bank with the pure white sand bottom. It's just like a swimming pool, this beautiful blue. It truly is one of the most lovely places on the planet.
Despite all this open space, there are challenges. We've got to dodge coral patches again, then get through the notorious Hog Cay Cut.
The narrow cut that separates Little Exuma from Hog Cay, known as Hog Cay Cut, carries barely 3 feet at low water. It provides a shortcut for those bound for the Jumento Keys Ragged Island or the south end of Long Island. A strong tidal current flows through the cut and works across the narrow channel at the south side. We recommend that you await slack tide before proceeding through this cut. You should negotiate this cut in good light because the sketch chart can only give an approximation of the channel's location. Plan carefully because if you go aground, it will most likely be on a hard bottom. And if you go on at high slack, you'll shortly be losing water. There isn't much help hereabouts.
Our cruise guide and charts suggested a route across the bank, then into the deeper channel and through Hog Cay Cut. Here we're anchored in about 9 feet on almost perfect white sand, and you can see the deeper water in the channel with very small patches of grass on white sand about 10 to 14 feet deep.
From here, it's just 18 miles on to Georgetown, where we check in with customs, then continue up the Exuma chain of islands.
Hey guys! Great, how are you? While sailing up the islands in the deep water of the Exuma Sound, we get a radio call from fans of distant shores who had caught an extra mahi-mahi and offer it to us as a gift. That is a big fish.
It's a beauty, but it's heavy. I can barely lift it.
Got it, Cher? Bring it in, Cher. Cher. Cher.
I really struggle and I'm afraid of losing it. Paul to the rescue.
Okay, so we caught an enormous Dorado the easy way, thanks to the crew of Pura Vida Sailing who dropped by and passed it over across the gap. Yeah, that's perfect. That's an amazing animal. I mean, we've got plenty of fish for everybody for probably 2 dinners.
I've never caught a fish with a boat hook before.
We have a few more days exploring the amazing shallow waters behind the Exuma Islands. Then it's nearly time for our friends to return home. It's the end of April and the start of the rainy season in the Bahamas, and right on schedule we get a serious thunderstorm pass over as we're tucked up in a protected anchorage for the night. Lightning usually strikes the highest object around. In the Bahamas, that would be our mast at 71 feet, the height of a 7-story building. Some lightning jumps from a cloud to another part of the cloud, making the clouds light up. This kind of cloud flash is actually much more common than lightning touching the earth or ocean surface. I slowed this video down 20 times so you can see the many smaller lightning discharges coming down called leaders. Then when the path is established, the large lightning strike takes the best path. And in this case, there are multiple repeated strikes following the same path between the water and the cloud. Notice the shape of the strike doesn't change. Thunder is the sound of the air exploding along the path of the lightning. Have you ever wondered why lightning is instantaneous but thunder rumbles along for a few seconds? This is because the bolt of lightning caused the air to explode along the path it takes. Suppose the lightning follows a path that runs towards you before hitting the water. Then sound from that closest point would reach you first, followed by the further points along the path, and the result would be a long rumbling sound. It's important that your boat is properly grounded to protect yourself and your boat from lightning. Comment below if you've had experience with a lightning strike, or if you'd be interested in a video about lightning protection for a sailboat.
The Exuma Islands in the Bahamas are one of our favorite cruising grounds, and we were relieved to hear that this area of the Bahamas was not affected by Hurricane Dorian. The Bahamas is roughly the same size as Florida, and the Bahamas government reports that Dorian affected mainly the Abacos and Grand Bahama groups and encourages you to continue to visit the other island groups this coming season. So we'll be looking forward to spending more time here this autumn before sailing on to Panama and the South Pacific. And don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss any upcoming videos. We also invite you to check out the Distant Shores Cruising Club. Membership benefits include sailing opportunities, live chats, and meetups, as well as additional resources for anyone dreaming of sailing away.